So, kind of walk you through what you should do is the upside down egg for the head, little cylinder for the neck. Think of it like a clothes hanger for the shoulders, if that makes sense, right? It's not a bad thing to. And then the backbone right there. So you can sort of see I'm picking out edges and shapes, important lines, I would say, in a figure. And this is a fairly blunt pencil tip. What I like about doing that is I'm not committed to a specific line, and allows me to do this kind of drop in shadows very easily and quickly. Belly button. Thank you to Carrasco for the cheers. Appreciate it. And I don't know about this other arm. What is this other arm going to be doing? She could be lifting up a bunch of rocks or something super heavy. Okay. I'll do an approximation of her suit that she had. Design-wise. You can see I'm kind of drawing the outside of her as well to find that line. All right, that kind of defines her hips here, and I'll basically do that until I feel like I've got the forms and shapes, and then I can go in and start drawing in ink. I don't know if I like the hand open like that. Maybe closed. That's the way to go. Rib cage. I think the last drawing session I kind of focused on the George Bridgman kind of trick, which is to draw the rib cage. So I'm going to show you kind of where that is here. All right, that's the center line there. And then the pelvis would be here. All right. And so that's the line kind of. And again, I'm drawing kind of behind her at the same time I'm drawing her. And that kind of gives me a sense of whether I've got the shapes down or not. So simplistic. So as I do this, even though I'm moving the pencil around quickly, I'm very aware of where that point is going to be, where that is, that the points on her hips to kind of convey that she's got weight on this leg here. I'm also thinking about kind of the measurements to make sure that the thighs are the same height, the same width. Dropping the center line down from her chin down to here, and where the belly button would be. And then as I draw that kind of spot, I'm thinking about the lighting as it comes across and how I want the rendering to be here and here. Okay, so a lot of these are construction lines, a lot of these are costume lines. All right, so if that elbow's there, I got to put this one kind of right there. So it's a lot of cross-referencing back and forth. I'm just doing it very quickly, but it's something, I don't know if the speed, it's just because I've done it a lot, but if you're drawing at home, whether for fun or professionally, I would really recommend that as you draw, you're trying to capture the emotional content, the forms, but also just be very aware of your silhouette line. As much as what you're drawing inside, but also kind of the edge of what you're drawing. Right? To figure out. Maybe the hips are a little narrow. Right, but now as this thigh kind of gets wider. Okay. Okay. And obviously there wasn't a lot there in terms of the face. The eyes are just kind of blob. So this is the tricky part, is kind of trying to nail kind of the sort of emotional state of the face, the expression. And so it's sort of coming to me as I draw. We'll see what happens here. Okay. I don't want that nose to be too long. Okay. And then It's almost like you're trying to find the expression, but you don't want to think about it too much. You kind of want to, I don't know who's governing it. Is it the pen? Is it my hand? Is it my head? Is it the drawing? Is the drawing speaking to me? Is it taking over? Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's getting there, but I can't think about it too much because then it starts messing with my head. I just have to kind of draw it, if that makes sense. What's interesting about this is that I feel like the neck is super long now, but that's easy to adjust. It's been a long time since I've drawn this character. Is it weird? I don't even draw it digitally that much, but as I was drawing the detail on her lips, I literally wanted to grab the page and do this and expand in. Crazy. Weird. I've had my kids kind of touch the screens of my laptops and go like, computer's not working. The head is good. So now all I need to do is raise the the shoulders a bit. Which is good because it allows me to kind of broaden her shoulders, because she is the powerhouse of the team. All right, still seems to work. Your sort of learning skills, it's not something where if you just keep drawing intensely that you're only going to get better. You're going to find that, and I think that's the frustrating part about it, is like at some point, the more time you put in, the worse it gets. So you almost have to kind of give your mind a break so that it can kind of consolidate what it's learned and take information that you've put into sort of short-term memory or short-term ability and transfer it over to long-term knowledge. And I think that's how you probably learn anything, whether it's a video game or drawing or whatever. So just keep that in mind. Just going to go a little bit faster because if I explain everything as I talk, I realize I draw slower. Someone said that it looks like Daphne. Now I can't get it out of my head. It does look like Daphne cosplaying as Caitlin Fairchild. So thank you, whoever put that thought in my head. Learn how to draw, and it's made great strides, and I think that's kind of like how it's done, to be honest. And it seems like he's getting work now, which is great. Art Munch has resubscribed. Thank you, Art Munch. Appreciate it. This is a 0.3 marker, so I'm going to do all my basic sort of underlying structure using this. And then I'm going to, excuse me, go back in and beef up some of the lines, maybe using this marker or different marker or that pen brush, I don't know. like I said, this is I'm doing this costume kind of from memory, but I'm also alternate sort of revising it. I know it's not exactly the costume that she had in the 90s, but that was a long time ago. Okay. And if you notice with this seam line, I actually kind of helped delineate some of the forms through some of the undulations of the line itself. Thinking about the forms that it's sort of trying to describe. This line's very sketchy. What's interesting is this marker is a little dead, so it's not necessarily drawing every line that I put down, which is a bit of a challenge, but the pencil line I put down is so dark that it's actually really kind of filling the gaps. Sunday, Monday streams. There are people that like to work on their yards or have people work on their yards. He's taking a bit of a break, thankfully. Okay. Start thinking about dropping some line weights that are thicker. And some lettering over here. As you can see, I'm not really drawing the letters, I'm drawing the cutouts of the letters. If that makes sense. And then I think there's like some weird genetic DNA stuff that goes on up there. The gaming stuff, I will see. It's kind of work in progress in that it takes time, and at the end of the day, I've got a ton of things going on. I'm going to make everything I'm doing more meaningful, and when I say everything, not everything that I stream per se, but just everything I'm doing in terms of my creative work and okay, so now I'm just using the brush here to thinking of her arms as chrome, right? Spandex, whatever material you want to think about it. So I am using the same ideas that I used on this cyborg drawing to really kind of focus on where these shadows and reflections would be. Okay. And then as I get more towards this dry brush, it actually helps me out in that I can do a lot more medium tones. Which are, I think, critical to selling this idea that it's reflective surfaces. So there are areas that I basically waited to ink until my brush started getting kind of dry. So now I can kind of come in and do some of the rendering I was talking about around this belly button. Okay. Same thing here. Gonna drop that shadow of that fist right there. Right. I sense that the brush is drying again, so it allows me to go in. This is a bare arm over here, so there's not going to be crazy dry brush effect going on. But all this area will have it still. Just waiting for the brush to kind of dry a little bit more. I'm going to maybe darken those areas here. There we go. Dry brush is in the house. Did I just say that? That's that's lame. Excuse me. Having trouble with the English language today. Yeah. Okay. Sometimes I forget this microphone picks up everything I say. Streaming 2 to 3 times a week, which it's you think like, oh, it's just an hour here, hour there, but it adds up, and it was definitely taking away from other stuff that I had to that I was working on. So you get something that looks kind of almost like a pencil line. I'm just moving around in circles like this. Small happy circles. Small little happy circle there. Here, here. Do you do ink wash too? I have. When I was doing Batman Hush, I guess one time I can do an ink wash session for sure. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. I would be down for that, as the kids like to say. Okay, so that line is a little dark, and so I'm going to create a dry brush effect here. as much ink out of it as possible. And moving that line. There we go. Well, that's it. We're the last ones. All right, so now I've got sort of the shadows, and like I did with the cyborg, I'm going to go in and add some thin lines next to the thicker reflections, okay, so that they don't look like brush strokes per se, fool the mind. Okay. Do some rendering here on this glove. Beef up that line here. I'm just cleaning up some of the edges here. Just kind of better defining them, straightening out lines, cleaning up some of the sketchiness of some of the lines here. Beefing up some of the lines here so they stand out more. And I think why it's good to kind of mix and match, meaning throw in some of the thinner lines on top of the thicker lines, is, again, so from the viewer's point of view, they don't know if what they're looking at is a brush line or a pen line. And that's just my own personal kind of approach or preference. I mean, obviously people know that it's a line drawn by an instrument, but if something looks entirely brushed to me, you have to be awesome with the brush. And if something is just all line work, you gotta do some interesting kind of rendering and put some life into it. But when you mix the two up, it's like, was that accomplished by drawing lots of little lines to fill in that black area? Or was it all done with a very thin brush? And I don't know what value there is to keeping that a mystery, but there is some value, I think, into kind of fooling the mind so they're not sure what they're seeing, so that rather than focus on the line as lines, they're seeing shapes and energy and movement and all these other things that aren't typically associated with line work or art. Not art. With drawing, illustration, right? Trying to create a feeling, an expression. All right, so that's kind of what I'm working on right now. Is just kind of cleaning up some of the stuff here. All that I just said very poorly. I'd have to rethink what I just said and re-express it at another time. But the same way, I try not to draw everything with just curved lines or straight lines. Kind of mix it up. And I find that allows you to kind of have the best of both worlds. And so what I'm trying to say is, when you use a brush, you get a definite kind of vibe or feel to the drawing, and if you use just pen work, you get a definite look. And I like to mix the two of them up so that I can kind of tap into both ways of expressing forms and lines. I think that was a slightly better way of explaining what I just was trying to say. And I think the master of that is Bill Sienkiewicz. He's just amazing. The way he kind of just is fearless and just puts down shapes and lines, and it's both artsy and figurative and representational, and just fun to look at. It's like you're looking at the object, but you're also looking at an illustration. It's just works on so many different levels. They kind of bleed, and what happens is like when you go over a line with a Copic line, it's sort of like using the multiply tool in Photoshop, and I just don't like that effect, I guess. You can't get a flat color to fill in an area. If I took a gray value and said, okay, I'm going to make this all gray, you see in Copic, if I went over an area or overlapped an area of rendering just once, you're going to see that darker line. And I'm not a fan of it. And they're super expensive. But my kids used to draw Copics. That's how I know they're expensive, because I would buy them for them. Okay, now I'm just going to erase some of the rendering in some of the areas, but not completely. I don't want it to look like I've said in other streams, I like having the line work there. I like it looking sketchy. I like when the but I also know that some of the lines there do show up in the drawing, and so I'm trying to get rid of the ones that I feel kind of break the forms and don't reinforce what I'm trying to achieve. Right. I don't know if you can hear my stomach grumbling, but that was bad. I think it's telling me that the stream is over. Time to eat. Okay. I feel like that line should be right here. Correct that with whiteout. the tools. It's how you use them. I'm sure, like with all things, there's a way to sort of surmount the things I just kind of talked about, but that's just me. All right, I'm gonna take white out here. I'm gonna finish this, fix this emaciated thigh. Okay, so we're gonna go back in and redefine that. I'm gonna clean up some of the edges here. Okay. Pick some of the highlights here. And do a little bit of rendering, like it's almost like ribs, but also like the three lights that we were talking about. The three light reflections. Right there, right? Right there. Pick out that edge there. Right there. Clean up that line right there. Okay. And do some more rendering here with the pencil. Just kind of darkening up values. And I think I'm done.